I have a small confession to make, Liam. This morning, my alarm went off at 6 o'clock, and I just stared at the ceiling for 20 minutes, wondering why on earth I should get out of bed.
Only 20 minutes? That is a victory, Emma. On some mornings, I need a team of researchers and a massive cup of coffee just to find a reason to put my feet on the floor.
It is comforting to know I am not alone. It got me thinking about motivation. We always talk about needing it, but where does it actually come from? Is it just a feeling, or is there something deeper happening?
It is definitely a fascinating topic. Most people think motivation is like a lightning bolt that hits you out of nowhere, but science shows it is actually a complex chemical process in our brains.
A chemical process? So you're saying my brain decides whether I want to go to the gym or clean my kitchen based on chemicals?
Exactly. It mostly comes down to a specific brain chemical called dopamine. Many people think dopamine is the pleasure chemical, but here is the surprising part. It has almost nothing to do with pleasure itself.
Wait, really? I always thought dopamine was the reward we get when we eat a delicious slice of chocolate cake or achieve a big goal.
That is what scientists believed for decades, but recent studies have completely changed our understanding. Dopamine is not released when we receive a reward. It is actually released in anticipation of the reward. It is the chemical of desire and pursuit.
Ah, I see. So it is the chemical that drives us to take action to get the cake, rather than the feeling of eating it.
Precisely. It is the fuel that moves us forward. Without it, we simply would not bother doing anything at all.
That makes so much sense. It explains why looking at a menu can sometimes feel more exciting than actually eating the food. The anticipation builds up the desire.
Yes, exactly. Scientists actually did a famous study with mice to prove this. They blocked dopamine in one group of mice, and what happened next was unexpected.
Don't leave me hanging, Liam. What did the mice do? Did they just sleep all day?
Pretty much. They were so lacking in motivation that they wouldn't even walk across a small cage to eat food, even though they were starving. But if the scientists placed the food directly in their mouths, they ate it and enjoyed it.
Wow, that is incredible. They still liked the food, but they completely lost the drive to go and get it.
Precisely. They had pleasure, but zero motivation. This proves that motivation is about the journey and the expectation, not just the final result.
This is a huge realization for anyone trying to learn English or build a new habit. If we rely on the final result to motivate us, we might never start because the goal feels too far away.
You hit the nail on the head, Emma. If your only goal is fluent English, your brain doesn't get that dopamine hit daily because the reward feels miles away. We have to learn how to trigger dopamine in smaller, smarter ways.
So how do we do that? How do we trick our brains into releasing dopamine for daily tasks that might feel a bit challenging?
It all comes down to how we structure our goals and rewards. Most people don't realize this, but the brain loves progress, even tiny amounts of it.
Oh, I love that idea. So instead of focusing on writing a whole book, you focus on writing one single page?
Exactly. Or instead of studying English for 2 hours, you promise yourself you will just learn 3 new words today. When you hit that tiny goal, your brain ticks a box and releases a small splash of dopamine.
And that small splash gives you the energy to keep going. It is like a positive loop. Success breeds motivation, which then breeds more success.
Yes! Scientists call this the progress principle. It is the idea that small wins have a massive psychological impact. They make us feel confident and capable.
That reminds me of an old friend of mine, David. He wanted to learn to play the guitar, but he was always too tired after work. Every evening he would sit on the couch and scroll through his phone instead.
That sounds very familiar. The couch has a powerful magnetic pull. How did he break the cycle?
He made a tiny reef for himself. He said, "I will just sit on the chair and hold the guitar for 2 minutes every day. I don't even have to play a song.
That sounds almost ridiculous. Just holding the guitar? Did it actually work?
It worked like magic, because once he was sitting there holding the guitar, his brain adjusted. He would think, well, I am already here, I might as well play one chord. And within a few months, he was practicing for half an hour every night.
That is a perfect example of lowering the friction to start. The hardest part of any journey is always the first step. Once you move, momentum takes over.
Exactly. Momentum is a powerful force. But what about those days when you feel absolutely drained? When even the smallest step feels like climbing a mountain?
Those days are inevitable, Emma. And this changes everything we think about willpower. Many people believe that highly successful individuals just have an endless supply of willpower.
Let me guess. Science says otherwise?
It absolutely does. Willpower is actually like a muscle or a battery. Every time you use it to make a decision or resist a temptation, you drain a little bit of its power. Scientists call this ego depletion.
So, if I spend my whole morning resisting the urge to eat cookies at the office, my willpower battery might be completely empty by the time I get home in the evening.
Exactly. That is why people often order fast food or skip the gym at night. It is not because they are inherently lazy. It is because their decision-making engine is completely exhausted.
That is so liberating to hear. It means we shouldn't just rely on raw willpower to achieve our goals. We need a better strategy.
Absolutely. The best strategy is to design an environment where you don't need to use willpower at all. You automate your good behavior through habits and systems.
Right. Like packing your gym clothes the night before and putting them right next to your bed. When you wake up, you don't have to choose what to wear. The choice is already made for you.
Yes, you remove the decision. If the path of least resistance is the good choice, your brain will naturally take it.
I suppose this links back to why routines are so incredibly powerful. They save our brain energy for the things that truly matter.
They really do. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't sit on the edge of your bed every morning debating whether you should brush your teeth or not, do you?
Hopefully not. It is just something I do automatically while I am still half asleep.
Exactly. It requires zero willpower because it is a deeply ingrained loop in your brain. Now, imagine if practicing English or working on your business felt as automatic as brushing your teeth.
That would be the ultimate superpower. But how long does it actually take to make a behavior feel that automatic? I have heard it takes 21 days. Is that true?
That is actually a common myth. It came from a book written in the 1960s by a plastic surgeon who noticed his patients took about 3 weeks to get used to their new faces.
Wow. So we have been basing our habit advice on plastic surgery statistics? That is wild.
It really is. But a modern study by a health psychology researcher showed that on average, it takes about 66 days to form a new habit. And for some difficult habits, it can take even longer.
66 days. That is a bit more daunting than 3 weeks, but it is much more realistic. It teaches us that patience is key. We can't expect a complete lifestyle transformation overnight.
Exactly. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But here is the comforting news from that same study. Missing a single day does not reduce your chances of forming the habit.
Oh, that is such a relief. I think many people give up because they break their streak. They think, well, I missed my study session yesterday, so I might as well give up entirely.
Yes, the all-or-nothing mindset is the ultimate motivation killer. It is much better to adopt the never miss twice rule. Missing 1 day is an accident. Missing 2 days is the start of a new bad habit.
I love that rule. It allows us to be human while still keeping us accountable. It is all about resilience.
Definitely. And speaking of keeping motivation high, we also need to look at what kind of motivation we are using. There are 2 main types, extrinsic and intrinsic.
I remember learning a bit about this.
Extrinsic motivation is when you do something for an outside reward, like money, praise, or avoiding a punishment.
Correct. And intrinsic motivation is when you do something because you genuinely find it interesting, enjoyable, or meaningful. It comes from within.
I imagine intrinsic motivation is far more powerful in the long run. If you only study English to pass a test, what happens once the test is over? You probably stop studying.
Exactly. Extrinsic motivation works well for short-term tasks, but it burns out quickly. But here is the surprising part. Sometimes adding an external reward can actually ruin your internal motivation.
Really? Giving someone a reward can make them less motivated? That sounds completely backwards.
It is a phenomenon known as the over-justification effect. Researchers took a group of children who loved drawing just for fun. They started giving them gold stars and prizes for their drawings.
Let me guess. Once the prizes stopped, the children didn't want to draw anymore?
Spot on, Emma. When the researchers took away the rewards, the children lost interest in drawing entirely. They had associated the joy of drawing with the external prize, which killed their natural curiosity.
That is a profound lesson for parents, managers, and teachers. If we over-reward natural curiosity with trophies and money, we might destroy the internal drive that was already there.
Exactly. This is why, when learning English, it is so vital to connect the language to things you already love. If you love cooking, read recipes in English. If you love video games, play them in English.
Yes! Make the process its own reward. Don't just suffer through boring textbooks because you think you have to. Find the joy in the daily practice.
That is the secret to sustainable progress. When the journey itself is enjoyable, you don't need to force yourself to do it. You actually look forward to it.
It reminds me of the concept of flow. You know, that state of mind where you are so deeply focused on an activity that you completely lose track of time.
Yes, flow is the peak of intrinsic motivation. It happens when an activity matches your skill level perfectly. If a task is too easy, you get bored. If it is too difficult, you get anxious.
So flow is that sweet spot right in the middle. It is challenging enough to keep your brain engaged, but achievable enough to keep you from giving up.
Exactly. Psychologists call it the Goldilocks zone. Not too easy, not too hard, just right.
The Goldilocks zone. I love that name. So if someone is trying to improve their English listening skills, listening to children's stories might be too easy and boring, while listening to a complex medical lecture might be too frustrating.
Precisely. They need something like a friendly, natural podcast about interesting topics. Something designed for intermediate learners, where they can understand most of it but still learn a few new phrases.
Just like SmartSpeak Podcast. What a beautiful coincidence, Liam.
Completely unintentional, I promise. But it really is the truth. Keeping yourself in that sweet spot is how you maintain high motivation over months and years.
We have talked a lot about the positive side of motivation, like dopamine and rewards. But what about the role of fear or pressure? Can negative emotions be a good source of motivation?
That is a double-edged sword, Emma. Fear of failure or fear of losing your job can absolutely move you to action in the short term. It triggers our survival instincts.
Right. It creates a sense of urgency. If your deadline is tomorrow morning, you will stay up all night to finish the project because the consequence of failing is immediate.
Yes, but here is the catch. Long-term stress and fear flood your brain with a hormone called cortisol, and high levels of cortisol actually impair your creative thinking, your memory, and your ability to learn.
Oh, wow. So if you were always studying under intense pressure or constantly criticizing yourself for making mistakes, you are actually making it physically harder for your brain to retain information.
Exactly. Fear narrows your focus to immediate survival. It doesn't allow your brain to build the complex connections needed for deep learning.
This is why creating a positive and safe environment for yourself is so important. We need to be kind to ourselves when we mess up. Mistakes are not failures. They are just data points.
Well said, Emma. Every mistake you make is just a piece of feedback telling you how to adjust your approach next time. Successful people don't fail less, they just respond to failure differently.
It reminds me of the famous Thomas Edison quote about inventing the light bulb. He said, "I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work."
That is the ultimate growth mindset. He didn't see those attempts as a waste of time. Each one brought him closer to the solution.
So if we summarize everything we have discovered today, motivation isn't a magical feeling that we have to wait for. It is a system we can create.
Absolutely. You build motivation by setting micro goals to get daily dopamine hits, creating an environment that protects your willpower, and staying in the Goldilocks zone of challenge.
And most importantly, finding a deep, intrinsic reason for doing what you do. Connect your actions to your identity and your passions.
Exactly. Don't ask yourself how to stay motivated. Ask yourself how to build a routine so strong that motivation becomes unnecessary.
That is a wonderful note to wrap up on, Liam. I feel inspired to jump off the couch tomorrow morning without staring at the ceiling for 20 minutes.
I will believe it when I see it, Emma. But I hope our listeners feel inspired to take one tiny action toward their goals today, too.
Thank you for joining us today on SmartSpeak Podcast.
If you enjoyed this conversation and learned something new, don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with a friend.
Keep practicing, keep improving, and keep speaking English.
We'll see you in the next episode.
Bye, everyone.